actually don't know how to start this video. I've started this video so many times, and I should be 11 weeks pregnant right now, and instead I'm not. After 18 months of trying for baby number 2, we were so excited. Today is the first day since everything happened that I feel more numb. And I'm sure that's just a stage of grief, but I don't want to come across as uncaring or cold when I'm telling this story, because this is the worst. This was my biggest fear, and I'm living it. But I think that this video can help women who are going through this, because now that I am going through it, I am finding a lot of help in watching YouTubers who I followed for years go through this and then end up with healthy babies afterwards. And so it's helped me. And I also feel like I can't not tell you guys, because you guys have walked through this entire fertility journey with us. And I can't just pretend it didn't happen, and I shouldn't pretend it didn't happen, because this baby was our baby. This baby had a heartbeat. And we were so excited. I wanted it so much. I don't want to pretend like it didn't happen. So I'm going to start from the beginning and tell the story of this baby. So last I left off with you guys with our fertility journey is that we were going into cycle 18, and it was going to be the first cycle that we were working with our fertility clinic. I did do a cycle vlog. I filmed it for that cycle, and we did get pregnant that cycle. And I am going to upload it, but I don't want to upload it on my channel as a public video, because I don't want people to find it and not know the story and assume that I'm still pregnant. I think those comments would hurt me. Congratulatory comments. I'm gonna link it on this video as an unlisted link so that you guys can watch it if you want to. I also filmed pregnancy updates weekly at weeks 4, 5, and 6. I didn't do 7 and 8 because I had a gut intuition that something was wrong, and I will talk about that. But I do have 3 pregnancy updates that I'm also going to upload unlisted and link on this video. And basically what that means is that you won't be able to publicly search it or see it on my channel under my videos, but if you go to this video and click on the links, you can watch those videos. And that way the only people who have access to those videos will be filtered through this video. I just think that's the only thing that makes sense. So cycle 18, we did some testing at the clinic. I go over it in that video. We did a hydrosonogram, and we did our very first IUI, and it worked. We got pregnant. And we were thrilled. I got a positive digital. I'm going in right now for my first beta draw at my clinic, and I am so excited and so nervous and just so hopeful. I am so nervous and thankful. I have been an emotional basket case since I found out. Like, I just can't even believe that I have a tiny little baby developing in there. We found out at the end of November, a few days after Thanksgiving, which meant we had all of December to be excited. And all my Vlogmas videos, I was just so happy. In fact, one of the reasons why Vlogmas turned into more sit-down videos instead of vlogs is because I was trying to pre-film them towards the beginning of the month because I knew that I would likely start feeling sicker and more tired as the month went on. When I found out I was pregnant, I called my clinic and they had me come in for my first beta draw. My first beta was a 32. I went in 48 hours later and I got another draw and my beta had more than tripled. And so it's just really good news. It means that this little baby that's burrowing in is doing everything that it can at this point. And I just feel so happy. You guys, I can't even explain it. And then they had me come in 4 days after that for a third draw, and they wanted to see it quadruple since it was 2 48-hour periods, and it more than quadrupled. I think the number was 504. So we were really excited and hopeful. We felt like things were as good as they could be at that point. When they called me with my third beta number, after I got off the phone with them, I had my first of what would be many crying attacks, feeling something wasn't right. You guys, this got so bad that towards the end, my mom actually asked me if I was possibly having pregnancy psychosis because I was acting so crazy. And I'll get into that, but this was the first anxiety attack / crying fit that I had where I just felt like something was wrong even though the numbers were great. I called my mom and dad. I knew at that point I was being completely nutty because the numbers were great. There was nothing for me to worry about at that point. So time went on, and at what I thought was 6 weeks, I had my first ultrasound, and there wasn't a baby yet. There was a gestational sac and a yolk sac, and it was measuring 4 days behind. So while at 6 weeks you could potentially see a heartbeat in a baby, because I was measuring more like 5 weeks, 3-4 days, it was just a yolk sac, which for that time would have been expected. I was a little bit worried that I was measuring behind because my dates were pretty solid. Having done a trigger shot and IUI, there's not a ton of wiggle room, but the way it was explained to me by my doctor is that even with a trigger shot and IUI, there's a couple of days in there that, you know, you could have ovulated 1 day later. It could have taken an extra day for sperm and egg to meet. I mean, you don't really know unless you're doing IVF, like exactly what the dates are. And then it was also explained that early, the ultrasound isn't very accurate, the measuring, and it can easily be off up to 7 days because you're measuring something so small. And so 4 days behind didn't worry anyone except me. I went back a week later at what should have been 7 weeks, but according to the newer measurements, it would have been like 6.5. Definitely enough to see a heartbeat, and there was a heartbeat that time. I was measuring, I believe, something like 6 weeks, 2 days, so it was like an additional day behind. But again, there was a heartbeat, and it was, I think, like around 120, which for early 6 weeks is a great heartbeat. Everything looked good other than just measuring behind, which was explained to be fine. During this time, I filmed my 4 and 5 week updates. And I was filming them a week behind, so I was really between like 5 and 7 weeks pregnant. Because the dates were off, it's a little bit confusing exactly where I was in there, but I filmed the last 2 pregnancy updates. And in those videos, looking back on them now, I am pretty anxious I'm having a hard time. I was getting more and more worried that something was wrong, and my anxiety levels in this pregnancy were insane. I did not have this with James at all. I just felt like something was wrong. I began to feel like my intuition was warning me, and I even say that in one of those videos. I said that I hope that these feelings don't mean something's wrong and my body's trying to give me a warning, but I think that is what it was. I'm a total worrywart this time. I don't know why I was not this worried with James. And I keep telling myself that it doesn't mean that my body is subconsciously trying to tell me something's wrong with the pregnancy, because that keeps crossing my mind. I'm like, I wonder if I'm so anxious because something actually is wrong and my body is trying to tell me. I keep telling myself it has nothing to do with your subconscious, like you're just anxious because you know that it took you a really long time to get pregnant and you know what you have to lose now, because I am a mama to one and I know how special it is and how much I want it. So I'm hoping that that's it and that there's not actually something wrong. Gosh, early pregnancy is awful. Like, it's so rough because I feel like I'm just gonna be a ball of anxiety until I'm out of my first trimester, and I don't know how to like cope with these feelings. It's been really, really rough. That has been the worst thing, is just worrying about it every moment of every single day. We went back in for another scan at what should have been 8 weeks 1 day according to my like original calculations, fully expecting the baby to be more like 7 weeks 4 days maybe, just based on the previous measurements. If everything was good and the baby was just truly measuring behind a few days because of late ovulation or whatever, then it should have been like 7 weeks 4 days, 7 weeks 5 days, something like that. And the baby was measuring 7 weeks 2 days, so even a little further behind. But it had a really, really strong heartbeat of 147 beats a minute, which for early 7 weeks they said was great. Anything above a 120 they said is fantastic. And because of the strong heartbeat, the fact that I was measuring behind even more was basically put to me as, it's a little bit worrying, but strong heartbeats like this are normally a really good sign. After filming my last update video, which I filmed when I was like between 6 and 7 weeks, I stopped filming updates. And the reason for that is because my anxiety levels were insane. I was crying a lot. I just like knew something was wrong. I was having a really hard time and I wasn't able to sit down and film updates. I had that scan, the 7 week and 2 day scan, on a Monday. And that Friday, I had what ended up being the worst of my anxiety attacks. And I called my mom and dad and they said, why don't you just come home for a visit? You don't seem to be doing well. And that was when my mom brought up that she thought maybe I was having pregnancy psychosis, that I was just acting so not normal. I decided that I was gonna go home for a visit, and I packed that night and I was gonna go the next day. But the next day I woke up and I felt fine. I had really, really strong nesting instincts that day. I wanted to organize things. I wanted to design the nursery. I wanted to plan out all these plans. I just woke up feeling really good. And I thought, I'm not gonna go home right now. I am gonna stay here and I'm gonna start nesting. And that was the day that I filmed my last video, which was my bathroom organization. I just felt good and wanted my house to be ready for this baby. However, after filming that video, I don't know if it was that I was distracted with a project, but that afternoon I was starting to fall back into my anxiety. I needed to check the baby. So I booked an appointment at one of those private sonographers, the 40 ones that you can go to and just pay, and they look at your baby. Alex and I went, and it was late on Saturday night, and it was an abdominal ultrasound, which I should have been measuring right around 8 weeks, maybe 8 weeks and a day, based on the previous Monday's measurements. And this lady said, yeah, at 8 weeks, we can see it on an abdominal ultrasound. All my other ones had been transvaginal, which you can see it a lot earlier. She said 8 weeks, we can check the heartbeat, we can see things, you can check on your baby. So we went, and it was just gonna be an ultrasound to just give me peace of mind. I just wanted to know that the baby was still in there. I was hoping that she would do like a measurement for me, but I know a lot of 40 places won't do that because they're not diagnostic, they're just for fun. So a lot of times they won't give you things like measurements because they just won't. But this lady, it was a little bit more of a casual place. She would have. However, when she started looking at the baby, she said, I don't see a heartbeat. And she said, to be honest, this baby looks like an early 7-week baby. It doesn't look like an 8-week baby. But she also said, you're so early, and abdominal ultrasounds are very hit or miss this early. Like, the baby is physically so far away. I also have a retroverted uterus. It's only slight, but basically it means that my uterus points towards my back a little bit more than my front, which means that the baby is physically a lot farther away from a stomach ultrasound than a normal uterus. So even though this lady said, I do 8-week ultrasounds all the time, in my particular case, it was a little bit more like, we don't really know if we're going to be able to see anything. And the pictures that were coming up on the screen, the video of the ultrasound, it was so fuzzy. It was nothing like a transvaginal ultrasound. Even I couldn't tell if there was a heartbeat because it was just so grainy and fuzzy, and like there were kind of flickers in there. And the heartbeat thing didn't worry me as much as her saying it doesn't look like an 8-week baby. It looks like an early 7-week baby, because I knew that I had measured 7 weeks and 2 days almost a full week ago. And so I should have been closer to 8 weeks than 7 weeks. And she said, I can't really tell with this ultrasound, but my gut is telling me that you need to call your doctor and get checked, which was obviously the opposite of what I was trying to do going to her in the first place, which was just to get a little bit of peace of mind. But I also at this point didn't realize we had lost the baby. I truly thought that the machine just couldn't pick it up, that it was just too far away and too small, and I knew going in that there was a risk of that anyway. So I didn't take that as you've lost the baby. I just took it as the point of me going for peace of mind didn't work. I shouldn't have gone to a private place that early. I knew I wasn't going to be able to see anything. That's what I kept telling myself. And I called my dad, and he reassured me of the exact same thing. He's an OBGYN, he knows about ultrasound machines, and he was like, at 8 weeks with an abdominal ultrasound, like, you're not gonna see anything. You're not gonna see details. It's gonna be grainy. You're not really gonna be able to tell anything. She did measure the baby for me, and she said that it measured 7 weeks and 2 days, which was impossible, right? Because the baby had measured 7 weeks and 2 days a week prior. That wasn't possible, right? So I just thought her machine was kind of crappy, to be honest. I was worried, don't get me wrong, but I had been worried since the 3rd beta number. And so my worry meant less at that point than maybe if I had thought everything was perfect until that ultrasound. I just had been experiencing so much anxiety up until that point that it didn't seem to like make it worse. It was already really bad. That Sunday, the next day, my clinic was closed. I didn't want to call like the emergency doctor on call. I should say that, because I know this is like a big part of pregnancy loss, I didn't have any signs in terms of spotting, cramping, nothing. Like nothing except my anxiety. I had no reason to think anything was wrong with this pregnancy. I was having a ton of symptoms. My boobs were so sore that I could not even wear bras most days. My fatigue was insane. I had heartburn. I didn't have nausea the way I did with James, but I was also told like that's normal too because pregnancies are different. I thought I'm just gonna wait until Monday morning to call. I wasn't gonna call the on-call doctor. I didn't have any real reasons to feel worried other than my anxiety and of course the fact that this lady couldn't find a heartbeat. But again, I was really good at tricking myself that didn't mean anything. And Monday morning, I called the clinic the minute they opened, literally the minute. I was like counting down the minutes that morning. And I just asked if I could come in like right away. I said, I went to this private place over the weekend and they couldn't find a heartbeat. And I was like, I know it was early and it was an abdominal ultrasound, but I'm just worried about it and I just want to get checked out. Can I come in like right now? My clinic has been incredible with making room in the schedule as needed, which I'll get into, but they were like immediately like, yes, come in like right now. So I went in, literally I was there within 20 minutes of them opening. And Alex went with me. And it was the same lady that did the ultrasound that had done me the week before and had seen, the strong heartbeat and the 7 weeks, 2 days. And she had the screen turned away from me. And she said, I'm gonna scan you first, and then as soon as I have anything to tell you, I'll turn the screen so you can see. And she put, the ultrasound probe was a transvaginal one. I was just laying there and I felt her, moving around in there, checking things, and the seconds just kept ticking by without her saying anything, and I just knew. So I said, "There's not a heartbeat, is there?" And she said, "No, I'm so sorry, there's not." She measured it and it was still 7 weeks, 2 days, which means it had passed that same day that I had that last ultrasound, and I had been walking around for a week with my baby passed away, and I didn't even know. But I did know because my intuition was telling me. I just didn't believe it. That week had been the worst week in terms of anxiety. I had had crying attacks constantly. I can't even explain to you guys the level of worry that I felt over this baby. And my doctor actually told me that it's not scientific at all, obviously, but that a lot of times when mamas have those feelings, they're right. And he sees it a lot, and that the fact that I was worried and wanted to come in and then something was wrong, that he sees that more often than what can be explained scientifically. They also confirmed that my body had not even begun the process of the loss, that there was no bleeding internally, that other than the fact that the baby hadn't grown and didn't have a heartbeat, there was nothing to show that my body understood that the loss had happened yet, which explained why I still had symptoms. And it was what's called a missed miscarriage, which means your baby has passed, but your body hasn't recognized it. It can take weeks, apparently, for your body to just naturally recognize it. I was given 3 options on how to proceed. The first would be to just wait it out and wait for my body to process it. He said that it could take a few weeks. I guess up to 5 weeks is pretty common. The second option is I could do a surgery called a D&C, which is a surgery where they put you under general anesthesia and they go in and they remove everything. One of my very best friends in the entire world has had a D&C, and so I did know what it was and kind of what it entailed. And I also always thought that if I was in that position, that I would also do a D&C. It just seemed like the quickest and the least emotionally painful way. And this just goes to show that until you're in a situation like that and you have to make a decision, you actually don't know what you would do, because that's not what I picked. I ended up picking the third option, which was to take a medication called misoprostol or something. The actual one that I took was called Cytotex, I think, something like that. 800 mcg of that. Basically what it does is it just gets your body started on the process instead of waiting weeks, months for your body to just do it on its own. It just kind of gives it a little kickstart to get the loss going. And I had trouble deciding between the surgery or the pill. I knew that I didn't want to do the one where you just wait it out, because I just didn't. I did go back and forth with the pill versus the surgery, but this is gonna sound crazy. This does sound crazy, but I felt like with the surgery, it just felt very unnatural, like you're just sucking your baby out and you're asleep when it happens and you don't even get to say bye. Not really. And I felt like if I did it at home, I could say bye. And I could feel like I had the baby, if that makes sense. So that's what I decided to do. I was told, there's a small chance that you could take the pill and it might not work and you might still have to have the surgery. But I still wanted to try it that way. I wanted to grieve this in my own time, my own way. My doctor suggested that I do the genetic testing on any tissue that came out. And the reason for this, and I haven't told you guys this, and there's a reason, but I'm just gonna tell you now. Do you guys remember last Christmas, not this past one, but the one before, the one where we were in Wisconsin? And in a video, I think it was the video I posted after the Wisconsin video, I mentioned that something really sad had happened over Christmas and that I was maybe going to talk about it, and then I never talked about it. What happened was I experienced what's called a biochemical pregnancy. And that is basically a very early pregnancy loss that happens before week 5. And usually it is, you'll get a positive pregnancy test or 2 or 3 or whatever, and then your period starts either on time or a couple days late, up to a week late. Anything more than that, I guess, wouldn't even be a chemical pregnancy. It would be a true miscarriage. Chemical pregnancies are miscarriages, but in my opinion, and this is not to tell you how to feel if you've had one, but in my opinion, it isn't the same level of hurt as losing one later on. Now, having said that, when I was experiencing it, it was, up until that point, the most painful thing that I've ever gone through. And I actually started my period on Christmas Day. So, thought I was pregnant, got several positive pregnancy tests, told our parents, told Alex's parents. We were visiting up there. We were so excited. And my period started on Christmas Day. It was pretty traumatic, and at the time it was devastating. I did film a video on it back when it happened, and I decided not to upload it. And the reason for that is that I felt like I knew that the level of pain of a chemical pregnancy is, for me, wouldn't be as bad as the loss later on. And I felt like I didn't want to make women who have had later losses feel some type of way, me being so upset over a chemical pregnancy. I can't really explain it other than to say that at the time, we had only been trying for 6 months for baby number 2. And so in my mind, the struggle of infertility hadn't really started yet, in terms of being super worried that it was going to be hard to get pregnant again. It took us 6 months with James too, and he was a totally healthy baby. So in my mind, it wasn't a good thing, but it was a good sign that we had gotten pregnant again, and I truly thought that we would get pregnant again in the next couple months after that. It just didn't feel right to put that video up at the time, and I don't really know why, but I wasn't trying to hide it. It's just that I just felt like it was more painful to me personally than maybe it should have been or would have been perceived. I hope that makes sense. It doesn't even really make sense to me. What that means is that technically we have now had 2 losses in a row. And while the chemical pregnancy is a much different type of loss than a pregnancy later on, in terms of the fertility doctor's view, it is 2 losses in a row. And so usually they won't do genetic testing, or they won't recommend it until you've had 3 losses, but he asked and I said I wanted to do it because we just wanted more information about why this happened and the chances of it happening again. So I went home that day with prescription for the pills and a little box. It was the Anora by Natura miscarriage test, and I was told to put anything solid inside this little container that came with the kit and to bring it back to them once the miscarriage was complete or slowing. I was also warned that it would be a pretty traumatic experience with a lot of bleeding and a lot of pain. And I can't really explain why that sounded better to me than the surgery, where you literally just go in, you get put to sleep, and you wake up a few minutes later and everything's done. The only way I can describe it is just that I felt like I wasn't going to be able to say goodbye in the way that I need to for my own closure.